Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc was a remarkable figure in French history, a young peasant girl who rose to become a symbol of hope, courage, and national pride during one of France's darkest hours. Born around January 6, 1412, in the small village of in northeastern France, she grew up in a rural household during the 100 Years' War, a prolonged and devastating conflict between France and England. Her family were devout Catholics, and Joan was raised with strong religious values, learning prayers and religious customs from an early age. Dressed in male attire for safety and modesty, she made her way to the royal court at Chin. Joan's arrival reinvigorated the French troops and population alike. Joan played a key role in a campaign to escort Charles to Reims, a city deep in enemy territory. With her at his side, Charles was crowned King of France on July 17, 1429. Fulfilling the mission Joan believed she'd been given by God. This moment was the pinnacle of her achievements and established her as a national heroine. Despite being just a teenager, she had risen from obscurity to alter the course of French history. Her bravery, resolve, and unwavering faith had galvanized a nation and restored a sense of purpose and legitimacy to the French crown. Her presence inspired courage, and her deep conviction convinced many that divine favor was on their side. Although she was not trained in warfare, Joan wore armor and carried a banner into battle, rallying troops and often leading charges herself. Her involvement in lifting the siege of Reims was a turning point in the war and marked the beginning of a renewed French offensive. The victory was not only strategic but also symbolic, demonstrating that the tide could turn with faith and determination. Despite skepticism and mockery from some nobles and advisors, Charles eventually agreed to grant her an audience. Joan's sincerity, confidence, and mysterious knowledge about Charles's private prayers reportedly impressed him. After a theological examination by church officials, who found no fault with her faith or intentions, she was allowed to accompany the French army as a sort of spiritual figurehead and morale booster. However, her role quickly evolved into one of leadership and strategy, especially during the siege. She lived a quiet life, helping with household chores and tending to livestock, showing no signs that she would eventually become a military leader and martyr. Yet, from childhood, Joan exhibited deep piety and an unshakable belief in divine guidance, traits that would later shape her destiny. As a teenager, Joan began experiencing what she described as divine visions and voices. She claimed that saints, including Michael the Archangel, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret, spoke to her, urging her to support Charles VII and help rid France of English domination. These experiences, which she believed were commands from God, convinced her that she had a sacred mission. At the time, France was in turmoil, with large territories occupied by English forces and their Burgundian allies. The legitimate heir to the French throne, Charles VII, had not yet been officially crowned and was considered weak by many. Joan believed it was her duty to lead him to Reims, where kings of France were traditionally crowned, and secured the French crown through divine will. In 1429, at the age of 17, Joan managed to convince a local garrison commander to send her to meet Charles VII. The city of was under siege by the English and represented a critical stronghold. Following the triumph, the city of was under siege by the English and represented a critical stronghold. Joan's arrival reinvigorated the French troops and population alike. Joan played a key role in a campaign to escort Charles to Reims, a city deep in enemy territory. With her at his side, Charles was crowned King of France on July 17, 1429, fulfilling the mission Joan believed she had been given by God. This moment was the pinnacle of her achievements and established her as a national heroine. Despite being just a teenager, she had risen from obscurity to alter the course of French history. Her bravery, resolve, and unwavering faith had galvanized a nation and restored a sense of purpose and legitimacy to the French crown. Her presence inspired courage, and her deep conviction convinced many that divine favor was on their side. Although she was not trained in warfare, Joan wore armor and carried a banner into battle, rallying troops and often leading charges herself. Her involvement in lifting the siege of Reims was a turning point in the war and marked the beginning of a renewed French offensive. The victory was not only strategic but also symbolic, demonstrating that the tide could turn with faith and determination. Following the triumph, After the coronation, Joan continued to advocate for further military action to fully drive the English from French territory, but her influence at court began to wane. Political factions grew wary of her rising popularity and unorthodox methods. Nonetheless, she remained committed to her cause, participating in several more military campaigns. In May 1430, while attempting to defend the town of, she was captured by Burgundian forces, who were allied with the English. Her capture marked the beginning of her tragic downfall, as she was handed over to the English and imprisoned. Charles Babbage. Charles Babbage was a British mathematician, philosopher, inventor, and mechanical engineer, who is widely regarded as the father of the computer. Born on December 26, 1791, in London, England, he was the son of a wealthy banker. This early involvement in mathematical reform signaled Babbage's desire not only to learn but to improve the methods by which scientific and mathematical knowledge was acquired and applied. After graduation, he continued his work in mathematical theory and became a Fellow of the Royal Society in 1816, a prestigious honor that recognized his growing contributions to the academic world. Though his early career was marked by numerous academic pursuits, Babbage was never content with theory alone. He was deeply interested in practical applications of mathematics and sought to address inefficiencies through mechanical solutions, and received a privileged education that encouraged his interest in mathematics and the sciences from an early age. As a young boy, he demonstrated a strong curiosity for numbers and problem-solving, often engaging in self-study and delving into mathematical texts that were beyond his formal grade level. His early fascination with calculation and logic would later develop into a lifelong pursuit of mechanizing complex arithmetic processes. He was educated at Trinity College, Cambridge, where he was disappointed with the standard of mathematical instruction, but found intellectual stimulation in private study, in associations with like-minded students. At Cambridge, Babbage formed close connections with other brilliant thinkers, and eventually helped establish the Analytical Society, a group dedicated to reforming the teaching of mathematics in Britain. The idea that would define Babbage's legacy took root in the early 1820s, when he observed the many errors found in mathematical tables used by scientists, engineers, and navigators. These tables, often computed by hand, were riddled with mistakes due to human error. Babbage envisioned a machine that could automate the process of calculation and produce error-free results. This concept led him to design the difference engine, a mechanical calculator intended to compute polynomial functions and print the results in a readable format. He received financial backing from the British government to build the machine, and work commenced in earnest. Although the project encountered numerous technical and financial difficulties, and was never fully completed during his lifetime, the difference engine was an extraordinary innovation. It demonstrated that complex calculations could be performed using mechanical components, laying the foundation for future computational devices. Undeterred by the setbacks surrounding the difference engine, Babbage soon conceived a far more ambitious project, the analytical engine. This proposed device went beyond basic arithmetic and introduced the fundamental architecture that would later be seen in modern computers. The analytical engine was designed to use punch cards for input, include a control unit, a memory store, and an arithmetic unit, components strikingly similar to the structure of contemporary digital computers. This design introduced the idea of programmability, meaning the machine could be instructed to perform different tasks based on the instructions it received. Babbage's analytical engine was never built in his lifetime due to the limitations of contemporary technology and insufficient funding, but the conceptual groundwork it laid was revolutionary. An important collaborator in Babbage's work was Ada Lovelace, the daughter of the poet Lord Byron. Lovelace, an accomplished mathematician in her own right, translated an Italian paper about the analytical engine and supplemented it with extensive notes that included what is now recognized as the first computer algorithm. She understood the vast potential of Babbage's machine, foreseeing that it could manipulate not only numbers but also symbols, thus envisioning possibilities far beyond mere calculation. Babbage appreciated her insights, and the two maintained a mutually respectful intellectual partnership that enhanced the legacy of the analytical engine.